The Hawks must deal Trae Young before acquiring Anthony Davidson. We've finally got movement. Sean's agents are reportedly working on a trade with the Hawks, which makes sense given that they clearly no longer want him. New front office with a new vision, but deals like John Morant. LaMelo Ball is a terrible defensive guard that no one wants at that price. Good luck trying to trade the Marc Stein bomb. The Wizards have emerged as a potential trade destination for Atlanta's Trae Young, with negotiations concentrating on CJ McCollum's expiring contract. My goodness, we have a buyer, but what are the Wizards doing? You have all these young men, and you want to have Trae Young in there. What are your plans for hanging a play-in banner? People instantly like the Wizards, the only person dumb enough to do it. Why would the Wizards trade for Trae Young? I don't understand it at all. In reality, the Wizards are the only team for which a Trae Young deal makes sense. After you've seen the details, they would be foolish not to do this. However, this is also huge for Anthony Davis. Now I'd like to discuss what it implies for AD and the Hawks. But first, Trae Young. So for the past 4 years, the Wizards have been tanking for draft picks. 2022, Johnny Davis was almost immediately kicked out of the league. However, Bilal Coulibaly is available for trade in 2023. Then came Alex Sarr, who was showing great promise, and now shooting guard Trey Johnson. However, all of these players have one thing in common. They require a point guard to create shots for them and manage the offense. So they've tried Jordan Poole and Sergei McClain. However, Trae Young is an offensive force multiplier. Say what you want, but on that side of the ball, the band is a little genius. Do you know how excellent you have to be on offensive to earn a max contract despite being so poor on defense? The dude is a beast. The Wizards will then be able to see how good the young players they have recruited are. But what is the best part? Trae isn't just cheap. The Hawks may have to pay DC to get things done. According to Marc Stein, it is unclear whether the Hawks would have to provide draft capital to the Wizards to convince them to absorb Young's deal. That's what it's all about. Trae's value is this low due to his contract from the second apron era. No contender wants it, but here's the thing. The Wizards aren't a contender, and they have $80 million in cap space this summer. So if Trae chooses his maximum option, that's fine. They can afford that and more. And if he proves to be a good fit for their young team, they may resign him cheaply. If not, let him leave. Trae Young is a risk-free move, and the Wizards are the only team that can claim this. And think if they sign Trae to a cheap contract and then trade him to a contender later. They'd look like a genius. However, this all clears the way for an Anthony Davis deal. With this revelation, the chances of becoming a Hawk have increased significantly. As Marc Stein stated earlier this week, not only are the Hawks intrigued, but aid agent Rich Paul is also optimistic about Atlanta as a potential destination. Rich Paul is the most prominent agent and also represents the Hawks' top player, Jalen Johnson. He wants this trade to be completed by your day, Davis Jersey Hawks supporters. But wait, the other potential roadblock besides a Trae Young trade check was what the Mavs wanted in return, because it turns out, Chris Mannix says, I can tell you with certainty that the Mavericks have been trying to pray away that New Orleans Pelicans pick from the Hawks for some time now, which the Hawks claim is untouchable. But how badly do they want this deal? Yes, AD is prone to injuries, but if they have healthy weeks in the playoffs, they can have a Cinderella run, especially if veteran CJ McCollum returns from DC to run point. I mean, is this Pell's choice truly valuable? Yes. If it goes to Dallas, it will be the top pick in a loaded draft disaster. But let's be honest, the Pelicans' pick might potentially be fatal. Waiting for something to happen. Why remember how the Hawks earned the choice on draft night? Joe DeMars traded Pels for an obvious player and sent the pick to Atlanta, of course. Then if he just acquired Derek Quinn, his team would be fantastic. Now Queen is considerably better than projected, but not great, and the Pels are dead bottom in the West. The pick looks quite decent. I mean, the Jazz, Nets, and Wizards are actively tanking. It's impossible to overstate how badly the Pelicans could finish first. However, in 2019, the NBA modified the draft rules. Instead of a 25% possibility of reaching number 1, they now have a 14% chance, which has not stopped tanking as they had planned. However, it threw the draft into turmoil. A pick like this is no longer as valuable as it once was, because the club with the worst record hasn't drafted first overall since 2019. In reality, the team with the lowest record has dropped to 5th place for the 3rd consecutive year. It's been a curse to have this pick recently. Hawks are out here talking like they're untouchable. Yes, right, that could just be a negotiating tactic to increase the value. I mean, in consecutive years, a playing team has won the lottery. The Hawks appeared first, followed by the Magic. Nobody understands this better than them. So the picks currently have the best odds of being number 1. In one spin, I loaded it into Ethan Scott's draft simulator tank. It dropped to 6. It only took 1 spin to cause a calamity. Okay, 1 more spin down to 2, 3, and 5. So the value of number 1 has plummeted. The Mavericks might make a big ad transaction and end up with nothing. Okay, number 5 is it nothing, but it's not number 1. Assume the Hawks all know this and are willing to give it up. What does a trade look like now that the trial has concluded? So, the Wizards get Trae and a very terrible 2026. What a response from the Atlanta Mavericks. Get Kristaps Porzingis' expiring contract, Corey Kispert-Zachary, Josh Shea, and the Pelicans pick. And the Hawks get Anthony Davis, CJ McCollum, Max Christie, and a good 2031 draft pick from Dallas. So think about this. The Hawks acquire AD and Max Christie, and all they have to give up is Zachary Josh for that first round pick. But in exchange, they receive a 2031 first from Dallas. Why? Because Dallas is so desperate to get this selection. The Wizards get Trae in the late first, but they must deal with Corey Kispert and Collins' expiration. And the Mavericks get the crown prize. The Pelicans also selected Risa Shea, and by the way, we must emphasize that the Pels pick is valuable because the draft is extremely strong, namely in the Zachary Rita Shea draft. No offense, there are 3 players at the top of the draft. Darren Peterson, E.J. Dion, and Cam Boozer are said to be exceptional franchise players. All 3 would have a significant impact on the Mavs, Cooper Flagg, and the Hawks. But I believe Cooper is so adaptable that he can play with any of them, but it may also backfire and spell disaster for Dallas. But because the Hawks claim it's impregnable, it feels like a huge victory at the time. This is a 3-team trade, and I believe it will please everyone. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't hear anything about this for a bit, given the trade deadline is still about 4 weeks away, and huge moves like this typically have to wait. Mavs. Let's see if anyone else is interested in Addy Hawks. We'll see who else is interested in Trae right now. When there is this much smoke, it usually means there is a fire nearby. The NBA may see a massive trade deadline, but the WNBA is about to be shaken up. 2 of the ladies have officially voted to go on strike if necessary. If they do this, the WNBA may no longer exist. And while that may sound dramatic, it is being spoken by a senior member of our front office. So why would these players put their entire league at risk? And is it possible that this will happen?